Hi, it's Peter Chapman from SKUFood, and I want to welcome you to another edition of our Recipes for Success, which are presented by FCC. And this series was started as an opportunity to give back to food producers and processors from across the country as they struggled to deal with all the changes that they were trying to manage through with the onset of COVID-19. And it's interesting because when we were planning today's session and talking about community, that really was part of the impetus to do these sessions, for us to give back to our SKUFood communities. So it's a great opportunity today to share some insights into how we build communities and how that online community can be such an asset to your business. And as always, and I already see something in the chat already, so that's great. It's great to see you here, Crystal. So we're looking forward to it too. I'm actually going to be taking notes today as well. I'm going to try and do the dual of asking questions of Shaun, our guest, but also taking some notes. And for me, these sessions are meant to deliver information for you. So if you have questions, by all means, put them into the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat, whatever works for you. And I'll be keeping an eye on it as we go through and try and we'll take a few breaks at different parts during the hour so that we can address your issues, because obviously these sessions are designed for you, and we tried our best to put it together with information that's relevant for you in your food and beverage business. But also we don't know what's on your mind. So if you have some questions, by all means, jump in. And I really want to welcome Shaun Whynaught today. So Shaun, welcome to our Recipes for Success.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to see you. And when I was thinking about how to look at our June series on internet marketing and having communities as one of the topics, the first person that came to mind for me to have here as an expert was Shaun. And Shaun's been integral in helping build our SKUFood online community. And he tells me that he's been interested and dedicated to small business since he was like in high school. And after getting a great sort of background in television production and going to school, he decided that he'd open up his own business, Blue Cow Marketing, and really focus on delivering marketing solutions for small business. And he's got a great balance of expertise between the technical side of it, which sometimes can be a challenge for some of us, and some of that practical marketing and understanding small business. So I think, Shaun, it's great to have you here. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, then by all means, you can share anything else you want.
No, I think that was a great introduction.
All right. And I'm not sure about the orange door with the Blue Cow Marketing. You might need to get a roller out and get that painted up blue, but I'll leave that to you. And I want to welcome everybody today. SKUFood is an online community, and I do work when I can. When I used to be able to do work in person and have the privilege of speaking at events across the country about the food industry. But now we're all working differently, and we've all had to adapt. And so SKUFood is no different. We're adapting and doing all of our work virtually. But I was watching a video yesterday, and the person was talking about how we have to embrace the changes and not sort of think back to, I wish we could do it the way it was, because the reality is we can't right now. And we have to adapt our businesses. And one of the points that the person made was that as a speaker, when we're speaking at the front of the room, we don't have a chance for interaction with the audience. We're looking at the audience. We're hoping that the audience is coming along with us with the message, but we don't have a chance for interaction. Whereas in this type of a format, we can deliver to people across the country, and we have a chance for interaction, and we should take advantage of that. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to understand we're doing business differently, but there are great ways that we can do it. So this kind of a format is an example of that. And one of the things for me that's great as we do our Recipes for Success each week is the involvement of FCC, and I appreciate their assistance in sharing, the information about these sessions across the country. And also, it's also important for me to share a little bit about FCC, and that they're really the only Canadian lender that's 100% invested in Canadian agriculture and food. And I think that's a big advantage for them relative to some of the people they compete with. You might be familiar with their support of agriculture, which has been their core business, but they also support the entire ecosystem that surrounds that. And they finance food processors, manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, equipment, packaging, and they do it right from artisanal businesses, small artisanal businesses, right up to large companies who are exporting globally. So they understand the nuances of different segments of the food industry. And they really work with people from every stage of that life cycle, from startup to really well established. And they can offer financing options that include assistance in cash flow, equipment, inventory financing, expansion, construction, property, startup, diversification, and so much more. So if you are in the food industry, I know they can be a valuable resource for you as you grow your business and hopefully take some of the things that we're going to talk about today about online communities and implement them to drive relationships and ultimately more sales. And that's what we have to remember, that we've got to tie it back to sales. And that's one of the exciting things that we're going to talk about today. So one thing, Shaun, before we get into me sort of asking you questions and learning so that I can take SKUFood to even better places, I just want to get a sense from our audience today as to how many of them would have their own online communities. So I'm just going to put that poll up on the screen, and it's a great way for us to understand who our audience is and how sort of established, because for us, we need to tailor our content to the people who are on the line. So I'm just watching some of the results come in, and it looks like we've got actually more people. Well, it's actually very split between the people who have their own community online and those who are saying, no, I need one. So we'll just give you another minute there to respond, and appreciate the great participation. If I could get participation rates like this each week, it'd be awesome. So thank you for that. And let me just share those results so everybody can see it. So you can see we've got, it's almost an even split between people who have an online community developed, those who need one, and then also we've got about a third of our people who would work in support of producers and processors. So you can't tailor it one way or the other, Shaun. You're going to have to address both. So when I think about it, you know, that one of the things you got to start with, you have to start with that back end, right? You need something that can manage this community for you. So where would you recommend food and beverage producers, processors start when they're trying to figure that part out?
Well, I think really what you can do is figure out what the online community means to you. And every business, every industry that I've helped and work with, you know, the online community is different for each of them. You know, for some, it's, you know, just having a social presence where they're open to two-way communication. You know, where some would actually have, you know, a membership or community site that people would log into, very similar to what SKUFood has. You know, so it's different for each that are out there. The biggest thing that you need to look at is what is manageable for you. You never want to take on something where it's like, okay, we need to have an online community. Let's get the biggest, flashiest thing. And then, you know, it fizzles out because there's nobody on your team or within your business to actually manage it and also feed it, right? This is something that is going to take momentum. You know, picture this big concrete ball sitting out in your yard. You know, once it gets going, its momentum will keep it going, right? And that's the idea with the community is, you know, the more that you are feeding it and building it, your members will it'll start to live and breathe on its own, right? So that's the biggest thing with it. So, you know, when you talk about what we call a back end or a system, you know, if it's a membership site, you could have, you know, a WordPress site that you could use. You could also use some, you know, pre-existing membership solutions that are there. But you can also use Facebook groups, or, you know, you can use LinkedIn groups. Facebook groups is a huge way to, you know, get people where they are, right? It's, you know, it's a level of access that you can get them in. So whether they are a customer that you want to build this community around and get them access to the group, you're still going to be in their day-to-day life by coming through their Facebook feed mixed with all their other things that they're doing. And we'll get talking about that a little later as to why that's important. But you're also then able to, you know, have access to them, and they're able to have access to you. And the biggest thing is also being open to that two-way communication. It's not, I'm going to build this so that I have another avenue to just talk at people. I want to communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. And holy smokes, that was a lot. All right. And you got to remember, people like me, I got to take this in. So one thing I think is fantastic is what you said about that it needs to be manageable for you, and it needs to be something that is the right size for you. And I think back to my days at Loblaw when Richard Curry ran the business, and one thing he used to really reinforce, he must have said it a lot because I remember it, but his point was that the food industry is 5% strategy and 95% execution. And when you said that, it reminded me of that, because I think it's a similar kind of thing, that you do need to spend time up front, but you need to create a solution that you can, you know, as you said, feed ongoing. And there's no point in having something that's too complicated or too onerous that is not realistic for the size of your business. So you're recommending people take a look and say, okay, what do I want this community to do for my business? And some of the things that might be on that list could be create a two-way conversation, you said. It could be that they have invested in something like a membership where they get regular information or maybe behind the scenes kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other things that you think that they should consider when they're making that list of what the back end should do for them?
You know, maybe, you know, if you're in an industry that's developing products and releasing new products ongoing, maybe, you know, that community is, you know, they're getting advanced access before, you know, the general market does. You know, you can test it on them, you can see what they think. So, you know, as much as they're getting benefit by being part of this inner circle, it's giving you almost like a focus group kind of atmosphere to say, hey, you know, we're thinking of releasing this new flavor of whatever, you know, what do you guys think about this, right? And now, not only are they feeling connected to the brand because you're entrusting them in that feedback, but when it rolls out, they feel a part ownership in that. They're like, hey, check out this new product, right? They're going to share it with their friends because, you know, kind of knew about it before it came out, those type of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so there are applications that people can use that are linked to their WordPress or website, and then they can use also social media as a different place to host that community.
Right. And really, your first starting point for anyone who starts out is, let's use something that already exists, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't say, okay, we're going to build our own membership site and try to make it, you know, a Facebook-esque kind of experience, because the reality is Facebook owns the market share in people's user experience. You know, everybody's mobile, everybody's got their phones, and a lot of people, you know, are on Facebook multiple times a day, right? So how can we be where they are? And the platform's already there. It's like, okay, let's use a Facebook group where people can join, and there's 3 different types. There's the public, where you know, if I went to the group, I could join it, I'm in. You know, there's private, which means that I can request access. You have to approve me, and then there's secret, which is only by invite only. Right? And those levels would determine, you know, what level that you're doing. You know, if you want it secret, that's more of, okay, we're going to go into this development phase, and we're picking and choosing a core group of people we want to have in there so we can communicate with them ongoing. You know, most common one is the private, because people can request access. You got to approve them. You can actually ask them some key questions before you let them in to it. But the benefit with that is, if you post something, then it's going to just show up in their newsfeed because they're a member of it. All right. And they're going to see it and engage with it. You can do your Facebook Lives. You can share documents. You can do polls, all that kind of stuff. And also, they can communicate with other members, which is absolutely crucial. It is not just a one-to-you type of communication. You're building a community, right? Think about the community you live in. You don't just go out and talk to one person and only that one person. Those people talk to other people, and it's that mesh type of mentality that is really the thriving point of any community, essentially also an online community.
Okay, yeah. And now when we go out, we talk to more than one person, but we're 6 feet apart. So
yes, that's right.
When we're doing that. So once you establish which platform, which application you want to use, how do you go about finding the people who are going to be in this community? And we've got producers, processors from who could have a small geographic market. We could have some who have a national market. So how do they go about finding the people to populate that community?
First thing is start with people you already know, right? So if you've got a team or close proximity to you. So if you got staff, let's say, okay, let's bring them in to start to get some of those people in that community. Then start with your existing client base and all that, and then you're going to start to reach out, because nobody wants to be the first person to walk into an empty room, right? So it's when you go and start to promote this online community and people come in and it's crickets because there's no content that's been developed, you're going to have to prime that first. So thinking back, okay, what can we create to put in there? Can we put in some content? Can we do some posts? Can we do it kind of in a closed launch first to really get it going? And then we have to then start to promote it, because there needs to be value, right? Nobody wants to join a community if there's no value to them, right? It's that little bit of selfishness that everybody has, and it's okay to have that. It's the what's in it for me. Like, why am I being invited to this? What am I going to get out of it, right? It can't be all about you as the owner of it, that you're just only going to get people in there so that you can get information from them. You have to give back. And, it's the whole reciprocity thing is, when people receive something, they want to give something back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think we always sort of jump to we're going to build this online. But one of my experiences has been that I can build it online, and I can also build it, I'll use the word manually for lack of a better word. So some of the things that I've done with SKUFood is when I go out to speak at an audience, which obviously we can't do right now, but hopefully that'll be back at some point. And I would ask people for feedback about the talk, and I would collect an email address from them and get permission to share and make them a part of my SKUFood community. Do you have some other ideas sort of that people could use that are not just online, that you can use to cultivate the people?
Yeah. So, when you're trying to reach out to people, obviously online is one method to get them into it. On products, right? So, in your labeling, in your messaging, in stores, locations, live events, obviously when they kick back up, in your invoicing, right? So, if you've got invoicing that you're sending out to clients, you can put it in there in the footer, email signatures, vehicle decals, basically anywhere that you would promote a business anyway is another way to talk about this, depending on what your community is. If it's a public access community, then obviously you can be a little more exposed in showing it off that way. Or if it's just your wholesale clients that you're reaching out to, then you're obviously probably not going to put it on your truck or your car, right? So, those type of things is getting people aware of what it is.
Right. I never thought about the invoices. I like that one, because those are my customers, right? And I should be trying to make sure that they're a part of the community, because sometimes we do develop relationships with people, and which is all good, and perhaps you're doing work for them, but you haven't got them into the community. So I think I may have to adopt that strategy.
Absolutely, because I mean, if you're promoting your product, your ultimate goal inside is to sell more products. Mm-hmm. But what you need to be doing is also giving them that value, that you're there to help them grow. So, having their voice heard is important, but also, where can you expand that focus? So if you're just selling a product, what knowledge do you know? You know how to run a business. Can you provide, an expanded part on that and say, okay, we're going to actually have some content on, running a business or whatever. We're going to bring experts, very similar to what you're doing, right? You can bring in, maybe a Facebook Live. You're going to talk with, somebody that's dealing with taxes or whatever, and you can actually bring that to the community. It's not about the product you're selling. It's about helping those of what matters to them that are part of your community.
Right. All right. And I was going to take a bit of a break, and I see we've got a question in there. So maybe we'll just take a break and address that one, as it's sort of a little bit in terms of how online communities are formed. And before we kind of move on to really talking about that value that you've referenced that people have to deliver. So the question that we have is, do you see services like SurveyMonkey as being different from an online community building, as it's more of a push technology as opposed to the participatory systems of social media?
That's a good question. So yeah, so SurveyMonkey, it's you're reaching out to an audience and saying, hey, we want information from you. Tell us this stuff. If it's just you're collecting it, But if they're giving content back to you and you're using it and reaching back to them, there's some level of interaction there, but it's not trackable, as easy as having a community where you're posing a question and people start to comment on that thread, right? So, if they suggest something, you can respond. Everybody else can see that response and it builds upon it, right? It's that discussion. It's not one way. So my answer is leaning more towards no, it's not as much as a community element as it would be having, an actual online community presence that's there. So that's the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that one of the, there's sort of another couple of questions that the person put in there, and just as about, does your online community have to be a two-way system? And which I think you just addressed really in that sort of part about SurveyMonkey. And for me, one of the most valuable parts of the online community and the work that we do to develop that is the opportunity for that two-way conversation. And it's not just a research tool, it's the opportunity to communicate and explain, and sometimes people may ask questions that we don't expect, and when you do give them an answer, they might even have an answer back for you, which is great. I mean, that's what we need to do to talk to the people. And the last question is sort of the follow-up part there was just, do you risk losing control? And that is something that I think is an interesting question about that, communicating.
Yeah, and I'm going to answer that in a second. I'm just going to add something to the previous question there. Sure. If you've got a question about a product and you go to a page on a website and there's a web form where you can submit your question and a live chat option, which one are you going to choose, right? Most people are going to choose that live chat because it's a communication. We're naturally programmed to want to communicate, whereas filling out the form, you submit it and then you don't know when the reply is going to come. You don't know, did I clarify my question enough? They can't ask responding questions, whereas the chat is, that's the whole community side of it. Mm-hmm. Now, when you talked about losing control, I've heard this for 20 some years in business and different things, and also more so in social media, where businesses fear that, like, I want to keep control of everything. That's not going to work. That's not going to fly, because people want to feel that they have some flexibility to do what they want as well, right? So ultimately, when you own that community, you have the ability to kick somebody out if they're not behaving, right? You have the ability to shift the focus of it, right? But there can be discussions that will be ongoing. Somebody can come into that group, pose a question, and just coming when we started, I said about how it living and breathing, where you get enough members in there, there'll be knowledge in that group that will answer that before you even get to it. And it's an amazing feeling when you build something that starts to build its own ecosystem and your members are going to bat for you. It's almost like they're part of your team, right?
Mm-hmm. And I have seen examples where somebody within an online community will take a stance which might not be in sync with the owner of the community, and actually the community comes to the defense of the owner as opposed to having to defend yourself. And I could tell you, full transparency, that our theme for June came from somebody within the SKUFood community. They asked, can you do some more on internet marketing? Because that's something we believe is important. And so I thought, well, that's what's important to the people. So then that's what we need to try to address. So I think it's valuable. And there are a couple more questions which we'll just work through right now, and then we'll move on to sort of the value piece, if that works.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next one is, can you apply the same insights and this same approach to the community that follows you on social media or social channels? Are these specific to groups and WordPress?
No, I mean, these are clear across the board. If you've got a Facebook page, people can message you there. You don't necessarily even need to start a group if you don't want to have that level of element built out. It's just, you've got a Facebook page, you've got a presence. Maybe now you shift it a little bit where you're posing some questions there if it's publicly okay. And if they have a question, they can message you through Facebook. We are in a world now where, myself, I'm 39. If I want to communicate with a brand, I will find their Facebook page and I'll hit message and get the messenger chat versus going to find their website and trying to find a support email or whatever the case. Higher chance that they're going to respond promptly that way. And it's just what I'm used to, right? And the communication goes back and forth. If
So the fact that I'm looking for a 1-800 number and you're going on Facebook to message them, that says something different about you and me?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at the airlines just briefly. When there have been a lot of issues prior to COVID with airline delays and things where you called a 1-800 number for them, you were on hold. You hop on Twitter and tweet and mention they actually, WestJet has a whole department dedicated to just monitoring Twitter for consumer inquiries and things, and you'll get a response in a fraction of the time. Right. Wow. So leveraging a public-facing social media channel to provide support and two-way communication.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the last question before we move on to the next sort of segment, I guess, on value is Sue was asking, do you have any success stories of how an online community has benefited a business?
Yeah. So, there's been, when it comes to the membership side, obviously you guys, what you've done with SKUFood, and you're building that upon that. A lot of my client base has been around, building, advanced to moderately advanced, social presences that are out there. So they're building a community in a way that, that maybe they have a Facebook group or a Facebook page or LinkedIn. And they're going to the next step of, okay, let's offer text messaging. So we have a proper, message that people can text, and they're actually monitoring that. Their receptionists will see it come in on their computer, and they can respond, promptly. Text messages have a 90+% open rate and response rate, within the first few minutes of receiving it. Emails are slowly getting worse and worse, mainly because people are not giving their right emails when they're opting in for things, because they've got a spam related email that they keep. And also, they're not checking their emails as much, whereas text messaging, happening really well that way. When it comes to an actual specific client facing success story, I don't have one that's going to give exact details of it, but different clients are at different stages with it. Getting them more in the mindset of being present online. So they're monitoring the stuff that's coming in. They're monitoring comments. A lot of people have just, let's post it, let's walk away, go back to work, and, we got something else. Oh, let's go post it again, versus let's go check back. Were there any comments, any questions, and building that community sense that way.
All right. And I would tell you that from my experience, that the food businesses that I've been exposed to who had an online community established before the whole onset of COVID-19 are the ones who probably could react the fastest to the new challenges that they face. So they could communicate directly with their community, with the people who buy their products. They could share what they're doing, and also share with where you could find their products. And because some of that has changed in the last 3 to 4 months. And if you were somebody who was servicing the food service industry, they might have made some changes and become part of a sort of the bundled box model where they were putting different products together or different things like that. So I think that the examples I've seen are where, and obviously nobody could see this coming, but it did give these companies the ability to react quicker and really maintain that relationship with the people who are closest to them, their best advocates, and the ones who probably buy the most. So, and there's one comment in the chat which I'll just reference, and if you're concerned about communication and conversation, what the person's saying is that people are talking about your business, whether it's good or bad, and this is one way to ensure that you're part of the conversation, and you need to be part of the conversation so that you can understand what people are saying about your business. And I think it's a great point, and one that's worth noting. So Shaun, as you see, you talked about the value, and I think it's really important for people to define that value before they get into creating that community. So what are some examples of great value that you've seen, and specifically in food and beverage, if you have some, where you've seen people give some of that value to the community?
Yeah, so there's different types of value. Obviously, there's value in the experience. So by that I mean, if I'm a member of a community for a product or a brand, is there somebody that's responding to my questions? Is there, new content being put in there? Is there, consistent communication that's happening? Is it not something that, had a high launch and then suddenly, drifted off? So value and experience. The second one is, that monetary value. So am I, as a member, do I get, a different price point? Can I buy on your website with a special member coupon code that gives me 5% off or something like that? And then lastly, is it content that's relevant to me? If I join it and suddenly there's webinars and blogs being posted and stuff that's like not on point of what I am interested in, I'm going to leave. There's no point in me being there. And can I actually ask a question and say, hey, would you mind actually doing a webinar or a piece of content on this, or I have a question on this, and are you going to open it and respond and put that content in there, right? That's the other part too with it. So, any kind of online community is really about hearing that member's voice being out there, right? It's not, are they allowing me to talk to them as a brand, right? Because that's what we tend to try to do, is we're going to build them, we're just going to talk to them. But the other way is, I'm here to listen. This is why we built this, right? This is your community. That word right there is, we've built this to be your community. It's not our community. We're a member of your community. You're our customer base. You are the ones that really help us stay in business, and that's why we've put this in place for you.
So a lot of it goes back to defining who that consumer is, who is the person who buys their product, so that you can then say, okay, if this is the person I'm the most successful with, so what is going to be of value to them? They're, if they're people who cook a lot, then obviously recipes and maybe some sneak peeks at some things that you're trying, and also maybe asking their input on some of the things, that if you've launched something new or you're thinking of launching something new, then I want to, give you what I think about it. So all those kind of things are examples where people can, before we ask them to buy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's got to be value before transaction. If you're, there's 2 points. They could have bought the product and that's how they learned about the community and they joined because of that. Mm-hmm. And that value starts to happen, right? So the recipe idea, we'll use that, is, let's say you sell this amazing maple syrup that has multiple flavors, right? And you buy the product and, you don't really know what to do with it aside from pour it on pancakes, but there's so much more. And on the bottle, it says, join our community to get, ongoing recipes and uses for this. So yeah, okay, we're going to join that. And that's what it's delivering. It's giving all these elements. And then suddenly, a member suggests or posts in there, hey, you know what, I just tried this on this and it was amazing. And then another member asks, oh, can you send me a recipe on that? And now it's starting to live and breathe on its own. And now as a business, you're like, oh, there's an idea. Let's see if we can reach out to them and say, can we include that? We're going to release actually a recipe book next month. Can we include your recipe? Right? Can you send us a picture so we can actually attribute that to you? Now you're bringing those members into a tangible product that you're now releasing to the market later.
Mm-hmm. All right. And as far as sort of the communication within this community, how do you know what's the right amount? That's something that I find I ask myself that question. How often should I be sending emails to people in our SKUFood community? And how do you know what's the right level?
Well, the fortunate side with that is the technology has been evolving in a way that, algorithms and, artificial intelligence is starting to learn individual usage trends. So, when you send an email out, you're in control of when that goes out. So if you send out 5 emails this week, everybody on your list is going to get 5 emails this week. Whereas in, a social media group, if you do a post and it goes in there, and I don't check my Facebook until like 4 o'clock, I'm going to see it at 4 o'clock, right? Whereas the email could have got buried. So, that is on the line of the right amount of communication is when there's value to give. You should never be like, oh, we have to put out an email today. We have to do a post today because we said that we're going to do 10 posts a week. And then you're really diluting the content. You then lose value. And you're going to alienate people because they're getting stuff that's not very highly concentrated with value. So I always suggest to clients is when you have something of value to say and to provide, do it, right? You could go 3 days without putting something in there. They're not going to be upset.
Mm-hmm.
They know that on day 4, a post came out and it was great.
And as far as sort of operating or executing this, and we referenced off the top how important it is to have a community that's realistic for you to execute within your business. How do you manage it within, and how do you make sure that these things get done? Do we schedule it, or do we, you reference when you have value, but that's I think it's a great litmus test. But should we be tasking somebody with ownership of this, and how does it get executed? And given that we're making stuff and we're doing other things too.
Absolutely. So, any community or online community that's built absolutely needs somebody to champion. And it can be one person, it can be, a team of a couple people. It should never fall on the shoulders of upper level management or ownership that's there. I saw a question here posed from Ron about, who should, really be the leader of this. And those who are the most comfortable with technology is number one. That's the biggest hurdle usually to overcome. The information and the knowledge can always be taught and trained in there, but you got to be comfortable with the technology that's there. And when you actually empower somebody on your team to say, hey, I actually think you'd be great for this. I would love you to own this, right? Is that something you would like to take on, right? I have to wait for them to accept that versus just push it on them. So the idea behind how do you roll this out and how do you launch it is, number one, who are we targeting? We talked about that and you identified that, but also what's of value to them, right? What do they need and what do they want? The easiest way to do that is ask them, right? Say, hey, reach out to a couple people, at 5 to 10 maybe, at max, and say, hey, we're looking to roll out a community. What would be beneficial to you if you were a member of that? What would you like? And then start to see, can we build with that? Go with a minimal viable product and just put it out there as a test, a beta version, so to speak. So you're not investing a lot of time, money, and resources into something only to launch 6 months down the road and realize you were too far down a rabbit hole off target of what you wanted to do. Because you can always, after you get that first version out, go with another version. Okay, now let's add this, right? Let's do a weekly live, Facebook Live to the group. Okay, let's have Jeff on our team do those if he wants to. So now you roll that element in. It has great uptick, perfect. And then maybe then it's a podcast that gets developed into there, right? So you're slowly adding layers, peeling back those layers of the onion so that you're getting higher concentration of value and content. It also allows you to pull one back if it doesn't work, right? You don't break the whole system.
Right. And when you're referencing posting and sharing there, there's a question from Crystal, which actually I was going to ask the same question. So I think we're on the same wavelength there, but is it right to sort of create content ahead and set it up in batches to go out, or what's the right way to be able to share all this with the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I classify anything that's social or content related as an asset or a moment, right? So an asset would be something that you could batch create. So, in SKUFood, you have different weekly tips that are developed, right? There's no shelf life really to them, right? No matter when you get that, it's still becoming valuable. So that stuff can be scheduled to go out, on a regular basis. So it's a kind of set it and forget it kind of mentality to it, where it's priming that community. And then you've got your moments. Those are things that are happening in the now, right? It could be, a policy change, a product recall or something like that, where, that's about, okay, we need to do that right now, right? You have no control over when that is. You should never have a community that is 100% fully automated. There should be a blend of some automated stuff that's scheduled, and you could use systems like Hootsuite or any social scheduling system out there would allow you to roll that out. And then also your live content that you're putting in there that's manual, that needs to take some kind of planning also internally to create, but also, roll it out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that for my experience has been that the best executed programs are the ones that have that foundation built of, we call it evergreen content that's always useful to the community. And so if you're a food producer or food processor, that could be recipes, right? Where you can build that ahead of time. You can give them either 52 weeks or 12 months or whatever the right number is for your product and your business, and you can set that up ahead of time. But then when you get into it, you have to react and respond to some of the things that are, I don't know, if you have a product that's great for barbecue and you're in a region, well, it's a sunny Friday, well, you better get on there and talk more, because you can drive purchases way up on a sunny Friday. So, and that's what we try to do with SKUFood. Like Shaun said, there's a base level, and then if you hopefully saw today, we would have posted about seeing a brand of flour at Sobeys on the shelf, which we've never ever seen before, because retailers are struggling still in a lot of categories to get inventory. So if you're a producer processor who's got product like that, then you should be knocking on the door, because there may be opportunities for you. So that's what we try to do, is that mix between sort of the foundation and then adding current relative information.
And another level of customization is the fact that we've got the tools available to every business to be able to ask in the initial stage to every member is, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Would you like to receive emails? Would you like to receive text messages? Or let's say Facebook Messenger. If you want to get to that level and that there's content that's going to roll out, we call it high value nurture content, where it's, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, and every time you create something new, you just add it to the tail end and people drop in at different points, right? And they move through it. Whereas it knows initially, if it's an email, then every time a content piece gets scheduled to go out, it goes to that person, one person, by an email. If they're text message, the system can send it by text or can send it through Facebook Messenger, right? This is a more customized approach, but it's got higher engagement, because if I want to receive it by text message, that's how I communicate. So when it comes in, I'll click it, I'll read the article, I'll watch the video, whatever it is, right? Whereas email, not so much.
All right. And interesting question from someone here who's asking about, how do you manage this when you have an owner who's risk adverse? They're worried about what people say and might risk their reputation.
Very hard to change their mindset. If it's about what, they're worried about what people are going to say about their product that's there. The reality is, if somebody's got a bad thing to say, they're saying it anyway. You just don't have an ability to actually respond to it, right? So if you have the community, it's actually a benefit, because you have the ability to be part of that communication, try to fix that issue. Right? A lot of times people are worried about, the negative review or things of that nature. Somebody says something that's, not so positive, right? And it's legit. You can respond to it. You can take that conversation offline, right? Call them, whatever the case is, fix it. Most cases, they'll be happy that you actually addressed it versus, them just going off on a rant and telling, 10, 15 people they know offline.
And people want to have a relationship with the people who are producing their food for them. And I think regardless of whether you're a large national food business or a smaller regional food business, people want to have a connection with where their food comes from. And I think those of us in industry have a bit of a responsibility to build that connection with them. And it is one of those things that I think it's a little bit like standing on the diving board when you're a kid at the swimming pool and you're like, I can't do this. But once you do it once, it's kind of fun. And when you do interact with people, you do start to really benefit from it. So I think that you do have to get into it. And then quickly, we'll just do a couple more questions. And then I just want to talk a little bit at the end about how we do generate that feedback from the people within the community. We've talked a lot about how important it is, but maybe just some vehicles that that people can. So there's a question here from Ron about thought leadership and generating industry and product content. So how important do you see that in food and beverage?
So with that, with the thought leadership and generating that product content that's out there, using that community for that, and getting them involved in it. And I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly with this, but getting those communications and throwing out these big ideas, and being able to then get that real time, real life feedback and turning that into products, and expanding on your products, shifting your products, maybe even how you package and deliver your products that you never thought of, right? A lot of times what you'll see is people will bring ideas from their life that they've seen in other areas to these communities, and you can pick that up and really build on it. So I'm not sure I 100% can answer that part of it, but what he meant by that thought leadership.
I think if I can just add a little bit, Shaun, I think what I would say is that, and one thing that for me that I'm always pushing food and beverage businesses is, why are people going to buy from you? Why do you deserve to be on the shelf? And if those are you need to answer those big questions. And that to me is thought leadership within your category. It's thought leadership within the industry. And it's bringing that kind of information. And it's not just because it tastes good, or not just because where it's made. It's really thinking relative to who you compete with, and who some of the other players. Why you? And I think that for me is thought leadership, and expressing where you see the category going, and flavors and different things like that. And that's what positions you as a leader, and shows why you deserve to be there, either on the shelf or in somebody's cupboard. And one more question before we move on, just about how do you share some tips about how do you make it about them and not about you? Because I agree, the ultimate thing is we do want to sell. So how do you make it about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, asking them questions that are generally, thoughtful, and, asking for their opinion, right? So, when you do, like, for example, this webinar series, asking people, what else would you like to hear about or to learn about, or, what do you think about this? And, when somebody has bought your product and they're part of your community, you could say, okay, well, this week we actually want to find out who of our communities has actually tried this product, right? And start that discussion, right? You're really helping, focus it on them, because what they're going to give you back in feedback is extremely important for you to use. But ultimately, you want to say, okay, well, have you tried to do it this way, right? Have you tried to use it, in this facet or method, right? So ultimately your end goal is that you actually care about them, right? So, that's how you're making it about them versus, oh, well, you tried that. Why don't you go to our website and buy this, right? It's let's help you use this better, more effectively. When you do that and when you provide value, in our business, in the marketing side, if I get on a call with somebody and, we talk for an hour and I know that, it's not a fit in what they want and, what we can provide, but I know somebody that can help them, or I will actually do some research and give them value, right? They'll actually, in most cases, refer other people to us. I wasn't looking for the sale with them, but I provided value. I made it about them. I was genuinely interested in helping them, right? Not once did I say, oh, now that I helped you, can you refer somebody, right? It's just people have that natural instinct to want to, reciprocate when they get something, of benefit to them, right? Do a great job of making a great community that people feel heard, valued, and part of. They're gonna support you.
So we've talked a lot about the feedback part, and somebody brought up SurveyMonkey a little earlier. Do you know some other sort of automated tools that people can use to create that feedback so that they can benefit from the information within the community?
So yeah, I mean, you can use the social platforms that are out there. There's, a lot of other services that you could utilize. I mean, if you're looking just for customer feedback, you could do a Google search for, online community tools. I mean, there's hundreds that are out there. specific ones. I'm not going to name specific ones, but they're always changing. Another element that's actually gaining momentum is UGC, which is user-generated content. So there's a tool, if you looked up user-generated content, it comes up number 1, where you can actually get people to submit content and you can actually display it on your website through their plugins. A very cool tool. It also works with your social media channels because, look at Pinterest. Pinterest was built on the backbone of people being crafty and sharing what they've developed and linking those products back to the brands, right? So when you find a recipe, you can click on it. It'll actually take you to the products that people actually bought to make that. So, that's going to be, key in those elements. But, as for the tools that are out there, you really got to know what it is that you want to do. If it's just getting feedback like surveys, obviously you got your Survey Monkeys and things like that. If you want to do, webinars, then you've got, your Zooms, your, webinar jams, all those type of elements that are out there. So, it's kind of scary in the way that there's like hundreds of thousands of actual technology tools, and every week more and more roll out. And not one specific platform will work for every business, right? You got to find out what it is that you need. And that's where, a lot of times having that conversation with somebody that knows, what type of tools are available can make that best recommendation, right? I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of medications out there, but until you talk to your doctor, he doesn't know which one to prescribe.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And somebody did ask, which is the best platform to build the community? And they reference Facebook and Instagram. Those are 2. There are many others though too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Facebook and Instagram is the social platform where the most users are on, right? So they're, if you're looking to go direct to consumer, then, that's probably your biggest side. Instagram, you can have a presence there, but you can't put links in your post, whereas Facebook, you've got the groups and things. So, anyone starting out, I would suggest Facebook is a great platform, just to test the waters to see if an online community is going to work for you in that way before investing in your own kind of platform or membership site that's out there. LinkedIn has LinkedIn groups. So if you're in that professional side, you could utilize that as well. But you'd have to know that, is your audience monitoring their LinkedIn all the time, right? So
I just wanted to put up one of those slides that you had shared about just the amount of people on mobile and social, that kind of thing, because I think it's important for people to really know where these people are when they're trying to find them.
That's right. I mean, you can sit there, bring up your desktop computer, and look at an experience and user experience and say, oh, this is easy to use. But if you don't actually go onto it on your phone, you're not going to know, is it really easy to use? That's why, not even 90% of people that use their mobile phone are using apps. So, Facebook has its own app, so people are using it that way. The experience on the Facebook app is slightly different than it is on the desktop computer. So keeping in mind, we are 100% in a mobile first world. So anything that's developed, put out there, has to be a great user experience on mobile first, and then we go looking at desktop as the second one.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing the amount of time, and I'm sure most people would agree, even since March, that the time has gone up as well.
Yeah. I mean, the COVID, pandemic has shifted that focus that a lot of more people are using online for, getting their information and communicating, but also has allowed us as businesses to say, were things that we were doing absolutely essential that we couldn't have done it online? No, we are forced now to have to do it online, and it's working. There are lots of businesses that are shifting to, okay, our team is actually going to work remotely from home. We don't need an office building. We don't need a place to sit in and sit on a computer. We can do that remotely, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I just encourage people, if they have any other questions, and I'm gonna ask Shaun to give us one more. I'm gonna ask him one more question, and I'm gonna put up some information so that if you want to connect with Shaun, because as we've talked about today, that you need to help people understand where to find you and how you can connect within their online community. So I'm going to share some of that. But if anybody has any other questions, I'd encourage you to put them in now, as we've just got a few minutes left. And Shaun, the last thing I'd ask you is just, we've covered a lot today. If for the people who are out there, and I guess I'll make this a two-part question. If I already have an online community, what do you think I should do today that I might not be doing? And if I am going to start one, what should I do first?
Okay. So if you've already got an online community, it's looking at, is there engagement in it? So, you may have started it with the vision of, this is what I think the online community should be, and this is what I think my audience wants from it. And if you're putting content in, there's no engagement, then there's one of two things that are happening. Either the content that you're putting into that community or the way that you're communicating with it is not ideal. So the content and focus has to change, or maybe the platform is not the one that your audience is using. So that's the biggest thing. Looking at any of the posts, and we'll use Facebook as the example, is if you're posting stuff into this community and you're getting no likes, no comments, no shares or anything like that, no messages, then, is it the right platform or is the content wrong, right? So the other focus too was, if you're looking to start out, the first thing you need to do is identify the audience and what do they want, right? We talked about that a few minutes ago. The second thing is, who on your team wants to take this on and champion it? If you don't have a champion on your team, it's not going to thrive and survive, right?
Great.
Right. And if you're in a leadership role, like the owner of the business, it's not something where it's like, okay, I'm handing this off to Sarah or Jeff to champion, and I don't ever communicate with them. No, you still need to be part of that, but they're the ones that are really kind of keeping it going, right? You need to keep checking in and, how's it going? Like what are you seeing on there? What can I do as an owner to provide more value to that community? Maybe once a month I come to a Facebook Live where, you're collecting questions that are coming in, and then I go on to the group and I answer some questions live and get that feedback.
Mm-hmm. Great. No, I think that's fantastic insights, and I really appreciate your knowledge today, as we've covered a lot of different topics on online communities, from what to consider up front and then how to deliver that value to make sure that you keep the community engaged. We talked a lot about feedback and then the two-way conversation and how you can learn from these people to make your business better and ultimately sell more, but without that really harsh kind of selling focus. So thank you very much for that, Shaun. And I guess as part of our communities, I know Susan put in the chat for everybody that there's a link to next week's session, which is on social media, which is just an extension of what we talked about today. So we'd really like to invite you to be here with us next week. And I'm going to just finish up as I do each week with some of the good news stories that we have in our food industry these days. So if I can find my PowerPoint there, I will put that up and share a couple slides for you with some things that we found. So May 29th, they called it Free Friday in Southern Alberta. So McCain's teamed up with Western Tractor and JEB Transport, who do their trucking out in the West. And they raised money for a really worthwhile cause, which is Halo Air Ambulance. And also they donated thousands of bags of French fries, and also $350,000 was raised for the air ambulance. So it's a great opportunity, or a great example of our food industry giving back during these challenging times. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Dare, a Canadian company based in Kitchener-Waterloo, and they donated over 100,000 bags of bear paws to food banks across Canada for people who need it right now. Another great example was Rocky Mountain Chocolate from Whistler, BC, who donated 25,000 pounds of chocolate to frontline healthcare workers and also just people in need across the country to give them a little boost. And it's nice to have some of the basics, but it's also nice to have a little bit of a treat too. And so they did their part in helping Canadians through this. And Chapman's Ice Cream, which I can honestly say is no relation, donated over 100,000 masks to surgical and medical masks to frontline healthcare workers in Ontario and Quebec. So another great example of our industry coming to the table and really stepping up to give back. And a couple of things I also wanted to point out of how our industry is changing. I saw this post on LinkedIn where Hutchinson's, which is a maple producer here in Nova Scotia, are looking for an online sales specialist. So it just shows you how much things are changing in our food industry when people are looking for that as a full-time role. And also some more information that I think we all need is FCC are presenting an event in conjunction with Nielsen, and also Bakery Showcase and the Baking Association of Canada, which is on June 29th. It's a free webinar for people with information sharing from Nielsen. And for those of you who have not been experienced to Nielsen front-end data, it is a very valuable piece of the tool. And I can tell you from my days on the retail side that it was incredibly important when people knew what was going through the cash register and could speak knowledgeably about the category. So some great events going on in the industry, and you know, the industry is changing. How we do business has to change. So we definitely need to respond and understand what is happening out there, because it isn't the same as it was prior to March. So take advantage of these initiatives. As I said, I want to invite you to join us next week at 2 o'clock Atlantic, 1 p.m. Eastern. And I know Susan did put the link in the chat, so you can click on that. But it'd be great. Brent Martell from Balance Creative is going to share some great insights on social media and how you can use those platforms to really grow your food business and really make it, you know, connect with your consumers. And I see that Sue put in there about the bakery. If I did give the wrong date, it's June 23rd for the bakery webinar with FCC. So if I said the wrong date, I apologize, but June 23rd for that webinar. And we don't see any more questions today. So Shaun, I just want to once again say thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate your insights, and I know some great information for people about online communities. So thanks for being here, and we appreciate everybody joining us.